Hey, what's going on, folks?
What's going on, our Shrub Nation?
That's not. I think that's the second time you started a video with something like that. Didn't you say something stupid in the other one?
I think so.
What's up, Plant Gang? No,
I like Shrub Nation a lot.
Shrub
Anyways.
Nation is funny, but no.
You read the title of the video. This is a Kyogre deck profile.
Yeah, you've read the title of the video. Hey, this dude's jumping the gun. I'm playing. This is Azelfie, my good friend and buddy. And I've been looking to make some GLC content because it's fun and easy, and I don't know, I just like making informative videos and stuff. I did the same for Fire Emblem, which is the other epic card game. And so I want to start doing something similar for GLC as well. And I have my buddy Azelfie here, who is less familiar with the format, but very familiar with Pokemon. Yeah, I think that's fair. You played like 2 games against me and maybe more.
I've been playing a lot more because there's people at my locals who have started playing GLC.
Oh, dude, that's sick. I
I've
didn't know that.
acquainted myself with it a lot more.
Yeah.
I've been looking to like the metagame myself. That's like why I'm here, so I can like help ask questions that people might have about this specific deck list that you have here.
Yes. Honestly, this is something I want to do for other decks that I've made as well. So this is sort of like a trial run. Kyogre is the deck that we're going to be talking about today. Amazing Kyogre. This is a good card. Very good card.
Yeah.
People have been talking about it a lot. Just a lot of people have been talking about it a lot. It's a good card. It's been a good card since it was released, and it really caught a lot of steam recently. I don't even know why. Like, what? I don't know what changed. Maybe just like his Basculin's helpful.
I think what just changed is that as people more like figured out what the metagame is like, people started figuring out what more top decks are. And Kyogre is a deck that, unless prepared for, it will just completely run you over.
Yes.
So people who are coming to the format unprepared, are not going to face fairly well against this deck. Yeah,
this is like sort of I would definitely identify it as kind of like the gatekeeper deck, sort of in the way that Arceus Dialga Palkia GX ADPization, that was like the gatekeeper deck of I don't remember that format. Was it Lost Thunder? Lot to Darkness Ablaze or whatever before rotation.
Yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah, ADP was like the gatekeeper. If you didn't have a game plan against ADP, or if you just were a deck that, I don't know, like single prizer decks, like you're just out of luck. Like it's a tough matchup. This sort of
it's not
does,
like as oppressive.
Yes, but it's it definitely has a very similar role in the metagame. It's a good deck. It's a really good deck that can catch a lot of unprepared players off guard, but is definitely not unbeatable if you know what you're doing. So, this is my personal version of the deck. I've been playing it a lot at locals, pretty much exclusively. And this list differs very heavily from Grant Manley's list, which I believe he used to win a recent pretty big online tournament. That list is pretty good, and I will talk about some of the key differences between my list and that list later. But I think the primary difference, you might look at it at the beginning, or just off the bat, you might look at it and see that there's a lot of very similar cards, and it might look like the same kind of list, but I've made a few key changes that I personally feel suit the deck better for the current metagame. If you kind of take a look at recent cards that have been printed, Torterra especially, Machamp from Lost Origins, the new Wailord that should be coming out, and is it Silver Tempest? Is that the name of the set? Silver Tempest?
We still have Hydro Pump Wailord around, which is almost as bulky as
Yeah, exactly. Like, the new Wailord is big. There is a big trend towards GLC legal Pokemon that just have a lot of HP. That's just kind of been... it makes sense, considering that standard the cards are printed for standard format, and in order to keep up in standard format, you need things that do either a lot of damage or take a lot of damage, considering how the damage output of a lot of standard cards right now. And for that reason, Kyogre, which is a deck designed around doing... Basically, the idea behind the deck is that you do 160 damage, and that should just get you there. Anything that is built, any list that has Pokemon that can resist that, can tank that, or build around that, is going to give Kyogre a lot of problems. So, where I've sort of identified the weaknesses of Kyogre are in its late game. Kyogre does sort of bring its own kind of late game inevitability. If you get one amazing surge on the board and take some prizes and leave some damage, and your opponent doesn't have any ways of getting rid of that damage, obviously you're going to be in a good spot. But any deck that has late game threats that eat a lot of hits, any kind of disruption cards, ways to get rid of Kyogre, you're going to have a lot of trouble. So this deck is designed to sort of counteract that metagame shift that I'm foreseeing in two different ways. Number one, it's less of a Kyogre reliant deck. You can see that in this Articuno. Most lists play a different Articuno, which I'll address, but I'm playing this one as an alternate attacker that can make some really big tempo plays with the Delta Plus ancient trait. And then I'm also including, what is it? I've got Basculegion as another attacker that should be pretty good. I think Grant Manley's list wasn't running this one. And then just in general, my game plan is built to get Kyogre attacking turn 2 as consistently as possible. There were a handful of cards that are... I'm going to be making a lot of comparisons to Grant Manley's list, actually. There are a lot of cards in that list that are sort of designed to play around a more stable board state, building up for like a very clean turn 3 attack. Cards like Steven's Resolve, using Basculin and Alolan Vulpix to go second and attack to sort of set up your board.
I'd say the biggest thing that jumps out at me is that you have definitely improvised into the two alternate attackers in Basculin and Articuno, where Grant Manley solely relies on the Kyogre to pull its weight throughout the entire match.
Yes.
You have the Shady-Deal's Inteleon up there, but regardless of that card, which is also a support card, everything else is purely support. So we are really fully focused on the Kyogre Grant Manley's list, while Plant's list seems to have a focus on using it once or twice and then clearing up the game with alternative attackers.
Yeah, it's definitely an upside of the deck here, is that I'm trying to build a more wide game plan. The big card that I had in mind doing that was Lost City, which is a card that honestly it's hard to say what decks are going to be playing it, but it's a card that you need to respect. That's something that I've just kind of had in mind when playing. Like, there are cards that will beat Kyogre, and people might not be playing it, but I want to include the answers to them regardless. Like, Hex Maniac, for example, like, we'll probably get to this at some point, but Hex Maniac is a card that I don't think I've ever played once, but it's not a card I've ever considered cutting because it's just necessary to beat a lot of threats. There are some cards that you just can't beat without Hex Maniac, and I'm like, well, if someone decides to play it, I'm sure going to be upset if I don't have it.
If your opponent is going to respect you, you can't, not respect it back. That's how Kyogre is able to score a lot of wins, is that people simply aren't respecting it right now.
Yeah.
So
we'll get to that, for sure.
Ahead.
So if you haven't seen the deck in action, the main point of the list is to set up this Kyogre's Amazing Surge. To do so, we have a lot of special energy that counts for lightning and metal, and a handful of basic energy. This card, straight off the expanded ban list, Energy Grace Milotic, when it's in play, you can knock it out to attach 3 basic energy from your discard pile to one of your Pokemon. That's Kyogre. 9 times out of 10, you're just going to be using Milotic to accelerate into Kyogre. Battle Compressor, another expanded staple, just sets up your energy super nicely so that you can get that attack going as soon as possible. Typically, your game plan with a Kyogre deck is to set up turn 1, get your Feebas down, find a Sobble or Remoraid so you can dig a little bit deeper to find the pieces of the combo, and then just sort of going from there. There have been a lot of pretty good cards printed recently that help out with that. Irida is extremely good. If you get that Feebas down turn 1, you can literally just go, all right, cool. Irida for Battle Compressor Milotic. If you haven't disrupted me, there's a Kyogre attack. It's as long as you can find another energy attachment somewhere along the way. Super, super good. Drizzile and Inteleon, the Shady Dealings engine that Zelfie alluded to earlier. Super good consistency cards that kind of help you get that combo a lot easier, and then also serve as a late game attacker, or just a mid game attacker if you need something else. Yeah, and then Remoraid, Octillery, good card just in general. Filling your hand is always great. Yeah, I think for the most part it's a pretty standard Pokemon line. Basculin, I think, is a good turn 1 attacker. For the most part, you're totally happy to just attach an energy to any one of your basics that you start with and retreat into a Basculin or a Vulpix if you have enough basic search. The free attacks are super good for setting this deck up. Very, very helpful there. Basculin has a Call for Family effect that sets up 2 basic Pokemon. Usually that's going to find you Feebas and Sobble to just sort of get your next turn going really well. And if you get your basics set up, then you've got Vulpix to sort of get your evolutions, and then you're way ahead of the game. Other Kyogre lists tend to build up behind, not this Articuno, but the...
Blizzard Veil.
Yes, the Blizzard Veil Articuno here. This one prevents the supporters from affecting your benched water Pokemon as long as this one's active. So the main idea behind this card is that your opponents can't boss up your combo pieces while you're setting up. That's super helpful. Like, again, it's certainly nothing to sneeze at. But due to the meta starting to shift towards requiring a more aggressive build with alternate attackers, the 70 damage from Articuno and the necessity to move that energy is pretty rough, especially coupled with the... Especially coupled with the 2 retreat. Zelfie's dog is joining the video, which is totally fine. It happens. Yeah, when I was playing this deck originally, I found more often than not that this Articuno would just get stuck in the active. I'm not running that many pivots, and requiring me to use my escape rope, scoop up net, or floatstone early on kind of felt like a liability. So having this thing that you can actually attack with and is genuinely very threatening is certainly an upgrade to the list, in my opinion, or at least a side grade. It makes the deck play a lot more differently. Yeah, just in the inclusion of this Articuno, I feel like the game plan is rather different, like where you're trying to go with the deck and how you're looking to play out your first few turns. Speaking of the first few turns, you're looking to set up. So I am playing a lot of the typical setup cards that you would play. I don't have... notably missing is Ball Guy, Bridget, Gloria, Sonya. Those are cards that I opted not to play, specifically because I, have the Hisuian Basculin. I think that's a really good... it's sort of like... Yeah, it's kind of like an all-in. It's sort of like, okay, well, I want to get this dude going ASAP, so we're just going to... rely on that. So, you know, if there's prizing that's inconvenient, that can be a bit disruptive. But for the most part, it's usually pretty okay. What I really want out of a combo deck like this is each of my supporters to impact the board in some way. So I'm not playing the Bridget, the basic Pokemon search cards, because you need to have them turn 1, which means you need to play a lot of them to sort of ensure that you have them. They'll be dead cards later, which is something you really don't want. And I already have a lot of basic search. That's just sort of something that I've built my deck around too. For the most part, this deck can function off of just finding one single basic search, because usually you're going to start something that's pretty helpful. The only bad starts that really wouldn't get you there are like an Articuno start or a Kyogre start. If you only find one basic, it's hard to retreat into your Basculin or Vulpix, and it doesn't help you set up as much. But for the most part, if you start any one of these setup Pokemon and find one other Pokemon search, you're still set up to attack on the second turn pretty comfortably. So instead of running those supporters, I'm running a lot of item-based Pokemon search. I've got Hisuian Heavy Ball, which is pretty essential. Since you're playing a combo deck, you need to make sure you can get your combo pieces out of the prizes. Level Ball, Nest Ball, Ultra Ball, Quick Ball, Dive Ball. All of these cards I am very happy to use to get just any basic turn 1. Same with Brooklet Hill. That card is going to be genuinely more surprising in the matchup than you might have expected. Also good at finding basics is Irida. Just gets you a Pokemon. She sets you up for the next turn and gets you an item card. She can grab you 2 basics if you need to by getting a Pokemon plus a ball search. As well, I mean, just your draw supporters being able to draw you into being able to draw you into more options is also super relevant as well. I found in my experience, for the most part, this deck sets up turn 1 pretty reliably. I alluded also to setting up a supporter turn 1. I personally think that this deck wants to go second. It has 2 really good turn 1 attackers in Basculin and Alolan Vulpix, something that you definitely want to be able to do. However, and this is sort of where I see, where I'm kind of examining the metagame to try and get an idea of whether this is a viable strategy. I think against a lot of decks, you need to go first, which is the other reason why cards like Bridget and Ball Guy and Gloria aren't as appealing to me, because they're only good as a turn 1 supporter going second. They're still good late game, but they have a lot less impact. It's not really what you want to be playing as your supporter. And since this deck wants to go first against a lot of the bigger decks, you kind of need to respect that when you're deck building.
Right.
Just a real quick, notably, the types that I think you do want to go first against are Grass and Metal are the 2 big ones. Grass being able to evolve their Turtwig and I think Grookey out of range of 2 Kyogre attacks before you can even pull off 2 Kyogre attacks is really bad. So that is sort of like one of the main decks that I have in mind when choosing to build my deck around going first. Being able to knock out Grottle before it turns into Torterra is very important. So that's sort of what my part of my thought process there.
Yeah, the important thing is being able to take away that evolving advantage from your opponent, or even though you do have some really great duels going second, you'll mind going second. It's just that going first will usually be better, because if you end up setting yourself into a position where you can Kyogre turn 2 as well, like, you are going to be so far ahead.
Yeah. It's a bit greedy to go first, because you don't get a supporter to help you set up the turn 2 attack.
Right.
But the deck is good enough that against most opponents, in most board states, you should still be able to piece together a win. It just gets to the point where against some decks, you really need to be all in on that strategy. So yeah, let's see. Some of the what are some of the other things that you noticed looking through this list that are a bit off?
What about the Tate Liza?
Tate Liza? I'm gonna be real with you, I just like this card. This card goes in everything for me. And just having more switch outs is super big, because I don't really have a lot of room for it. Just draw supporter that also is a switch out. I think I have literally Floatstone, Tate and Liza, and then Scoop Up and Escape Rope, and that's all I have. And Guzma.
Gotcha.
Tate and Liza, honestly, unironically, that's a card I put in pretty much every deck. I think switch outs are super important in this format.
Yeah, Tate Liza is like super valuable too, because it's both on 1. But since you talked about a lot of the turn 1, we want to talk about how the Kyogre actually gets to attack by turn 2. We mentioned Milotic, but what other tools do you have to set up a Kyogre, especially after turn 2? How do you continue the Kyogre pressure going?
Good point. Okay, so the other thing that this deck is kind of built around is being able to recover a Kyogre as quickly as possible. Because when you're playing Kyogre, you do expect your opponent to knock out a Kyogre. And since the deck is built around the main idea of the deck is if you can attack twice with Kyogre, you should be winning the game. So you need to be able to do that as soon as possible before they can find a way to disrupt that. So if you get that attack in first and then it gets knocked out, I have a decent amount of recovery cards. I'm gonna be real with you. I wish there was room for more, but it's kind of tough. Revive is a good card for specifically Kyogre. Most decks don't run Revive, but I think that's a really good one. Super Rod is my recovery rod of choice. I'm gonna be honest, I might want to start looking at Ordinary Rod, because there have been a lot of times where I've had to shuffle energy back in that I didn't want to. However, being able to get the extra Pokemon or energy late game, it is pretty good. Especially being able to recover an entire Inteleon line is pretty valuable. And then the other card is Rescue Stretcher. I've got these 3 recovery cards. That's kind of all that I'm running. It's a little bit, there isn't really much more you can do. Additionally,
it's a little bit loose, but by that point, you've also got Shade Dealings that maybe pick one of those out.
yeah.
You got extra ways to draw cards, so it's not out of the scope. Because
it's
by
not
the time
too
you
bad.
need those cards, it's in the later parts of the game when you have a lot more access to your deck.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. Something that I think is worth mentioning, like this is no different than Grant Manley's list either. I think he's running a very similar spread of recovery cards. You just don't need as many. The idea is that you're gonna win when you attack twice. You just need to be able to find one of them. Something else that I didn't mention that I do like about Rescue Stretcher is that Battle Compressor is just a good way to, if you've got an opening hand with like Compressor and Rescue Stretcher, you can, it's kind of like a Pokemon search in a way. It does burn through some of your late game recovery resources, but you know, it's a good play to have in mind. But then the main idea, some of the big comeback cards are Raihan, huge. This card kind of doesn't really need to be explained, but being able to attach a basic energy to accelerate energy to one of your Pokemon and then just search for whatever you need, sometimes counter energy, can be a really, really big game-changing play. If you attack once with Kyogre and it gets knocked out, and you can respond with like Revive, Raihan, counter energy, and then Aqua Patch, and just attack again, it's really hard to come back from that. Most decks can't really respond, can't really do anything about that. It's a pretty, like, you kind of have to have a lot of those pieces in order to actually make that happen. And it sort of doesn't work nearly as well if you're drawing stuff out of order. But it's definitely a play that can be made. Additionally, a funny play that you can do is go Lieutenant Surge, Raihan. Raihan attaches an energy, gets you back versus Seeker, and then you Raihan again and attach counter energy.
Oh, that's really cute.
Yeah, did you know about that one?
No, I didn't.
Oh, it's really gross. It's a nasty one. Yeah, there are a lot of things you can do. Let's just say there's a lot of things this deck can do to sort of make that comeback. I will say, worth mentioning, Surge is probably my 60th card. If I'm cutting anything for something else, it's probably going to be Surge. Just because a play like that, it's cute. It's a strong play, but you kind of have to have all the pieces and exactly the right time in the order that you need them. It's not the most reliable. Still good. Don't get me wrong. Let's see. Things that my version is running that other decks aren't are Peony. Peony is like I think one of my favorite cards for combo decks in this format.
Peony was going to be the next card to ask about because Peony is pretty unique in terms of all the other supporters that we see here, at least.
Yeah, or just in general. Most decks aren't playing Peony. People don't like to discard cards in their singleton format. So Peony does not see a lot of he doesn't see a lot of love. But Peony being able to just get you your Battle Compressor and Evolution Search to get Milotic, yeah, that's pretty darn good. Or he can get you Escape Rope, he can get you like a Scoop Up Net, a Stadium if you need a Stadium. Like he can get you Silent Lab Battle Compressor if you've got your Pokemon set up already. I think is extremely valuable. Additionally,
yeah, exactly this.
Yep. Any deck that plays an Abyssal Hand type effect, draw till you have X cards, I think fits very well with Peony. Because it's not a huge issue. Same deal with, like, I think Lightning. Lightning would benefit a lot from Peony. I think that's a card that should be considered more. You've got Electrode and Zebstrika. Peony's probably going to find a low... Not only is he going to be able to... You're going to be able to refill your hand, but Lightning typically tends to play a low resource game as it is, so you're probably not really discarding that much. Kind of the same deal with Kyogre. You can pretty much use every card in your hand, and any card that you can't use... at any given point in time, it's generally okay to ship it with Peony because you have replacements for that kind of effect. Like, I don't feel bad discarding a Raihan to get to Peony if it's getting me exactly what I need to attack. Same deal with Hex Maniac, Draw Supporters, etc. Extra energy
is a means to get you to that attack anyways.
Yes,
so even
exactly.
if you're discarding a Raihan, it's not like the end of the world if you're getting your attack now. especially in a deck like Kyogre, which takes so much momentum when you are able to find those attacks.
Mm-hmm. It also combos very nicely with Professor's Letter. If you can't find Battle Compressor, like a turn 1 retreat a basic energy into a Basculin, and then finding Professor's Letter and discarding the other energy to Peony is actually like a really good play that you can make. That comes up pretty regularly. All right. The other elephant in the room is, hey, Plant, you're playing a combo deck. Why aren't you playing Peonia or Gladion? This kind of goes back to the thought that I had before, like the idea that I mentioned with Bridget, Gloria, Ball Guy. I want my supporters that I'm playing to have some kind of very significant impact on the board state, whether that's seeing me more cards, or disrupting my opponent, or getting exactly the things that I need. So I opted to not run those cards. I have Heavy Ball as a way to get things out of my prizes that are like some of the essential basics. Like you can't attack with Kyogre without Kyogre. And you can't play a Feebas without having access to Feebas. Or you can't play Milotic, right?
Right.
It is a bit greedy. If you prize multiple important basics, like if you prize Feebas and Kyogre, that's tough. Not a good way. You can't really... Not a lot you can do there. So what I've actually done to sort of counteract that is play a lot more attackers. That's kind of the idea behind the deck. If I let's say I prize Kyogre and I also prize Feebas, I'm going to use my Heavy Ball to get Feebas. Feebas can go into my Milotic and then set up Articuno or something, and then I'm playing Town Map to get exactly the cards that I need out of my prizes without having to play a supporter to do so. In playing these 4 attackers that can kind of just take prizes if you need to, that's sort of the main idea behind the lack of Peony and Gladion. And it's honestly been fine. It has run well. Typically, you don't usually prize too many things. This line is punished by... I just cut the card. It's fine. This line is punished by prizing Milotic, because you can't search for Milotic off of the... what am I doing? Yes, there we go.
Off the Hisuian Heavy Ball.
Right, yeah. You can't get Milotic back from Hisuian Heavy Ball. But, you know, it's fine. You don't need Milotic to win games. You can kind of go behind on prizes, and Basculegion can take a knockout, and then you just have Feebas ready to go for the next turn. It honestly works fine. This is also where I really like this Articuno, because if you get behind in prizes, Articuno can catch you back up with the its ancient trait that lets it take bonus prizes.
Yes.
Yeah, and again, it works very nicely with Milotic. You can accelerate water and a different basic type, and then just attach one of the special energies, and it gets you the attack. Very good. I guess since I'm already on the topic, speaking on Articuno, the other benefit of playing Articuno is that you get it honestly combos very nicely with Kyogre. The magic number in GLC for most support Pokemon is 90. You want 90 HP Pokemon because then Level Ball can get them. So a lot of support Pokemon tend to be 90 HP. This Octillery, it's going to sit on my bench with 90 HP until the end of the game. Drizzile, it's got 90 HP. So that can be repeated for tons of other Pokemon, right? There are a lot of other Pokemon that have exactly 90 to 100 HP. Kyogre, you hit him for 80, and Articuno cleans up 20 damage. Done. No big deal. Take 20.
Right.
Or take 2
you don't
prizes.
even have to worry about trying to hit like 2 point flips or something.
Yep.
You just have the damage already set up there.
Yeah. And this is like something that like Inteleon can do to pick off attackers also. But being able to take 2 prizes for something like that is really hard to come back from. I've won games where Kyogre never attacked at all. I just kept putting it in play, and it was a thing that people had to get rid of, and Articuno just went coast to coast and took, like, I think 4 or 5 prizes. We couldn't have taken 5. It took, like, maybe 4 prizes or something, and then Inteleon just cleaned up, something like that. So Articuno can do a lot of work. It's no slouch. I'm not building around the coin flip. You get lucky or you don't. For the most part, you build around being able to flip 1 heads and take a knockout off of it. That's generally what you're looking to do with this card. Or 0, 1 to 0.
Because with 80 plus the one heads, which would be like 40 plus 20. You hit 120. And 120 is also just a prominent number, not for any particular reason, just because 120 shows up a lot.
No, I think
that's it.
The math is a little bit wrong there. I think you actually 2 heads is 100, and then 3 heads.
Well, I'm saying
is...
like with a Kyogre suite, and then plus a heads.
Oh, right. Exactly. Yeah. 1 heads gets you to 120. I think it gets you to like 140 after
it gets you 140.
Yeah, which is even better. Like honestly, that's even better. That knocks out Genesect, Zarude. 140 is also a good number, but 120 sort of is, it's 90 and then 120 are really the GLC benchmarks. 120 knocks out opposing Kyogre. It knocks out Basculegion.
There's just a lot of Pokemon with 120. Like, we could not list them all here.
Yeah, it wouldn't make any sense to. Yeah, speaking of 120, Basculegion hitting 120 is big. Inteleon hitting 120, great. Just good math all around. Articuno also combos with the Fighting Fury Belt, lets you hit, was it 70 HP with 1 heads, which is a super relevant number. Like, that's pretty good. It also can revenge KO Raikou with 2 heads, which is genuinely relevant too. Articuno is going to be your best attacker against Amazing Rare Raikou. If Raikou gets set up before Kyogre, you're going to be in a really big amount of trouble. So finding a Fighting Fury Belt and being able to A, tank a hit, and B, knock out Raikou in return is pretty significant. So that is certainly an upside there. Last but not least, let's see, real quick, I'll touch on the energy. I'm running 222 basics. It just protects against prizing. You only need 1 of each kind for Milotic to accelerate. And then the special energy, I've seen a lot of lists running less energy, but I think that the number that I have is very good. There are a lot of times where I've been forced to play into a late game situation where I'm looking at my deck and I have like 1 or 2 energy in the deck. Maybe I had to discard a lot earlier with Peony or Sycamore trying to dig for a piece of the combo. You battle Compressor away 3 of them is generally a line of play that you're doing every part of the game. You only have you have a very limited number of attachments in this deck. You get, each of these can be attached once. You're probably expecting 1, 2, 3 energy to get battle compressored. Counter energy sometimes counts as 2 energy, but sometimes it counts as a colorless energy, which isn't really that good. So this 11 energy is kind of down to like 8, we'll say. We'll count counter energy, so it's down to like 8. Raihan is another energy, so you've got 9. Versus Seeker for Raihan gets you 10. And then we have the Super Rod gets you a little bit more. Yeah, and Aqua Patch too. So you have a very limited amount of energy you have access to in this game. It's really, like, this deck is really all in on that Kyogre being able to just attack twice and win. You don't need that much energy, you just need to be able to find it. And being able to find it is super important, and being able to still have some left in the tank if you get down into a late game situation where Inteleon needs to take some knockouts, or you need 2 water for Articuno. It's super important to have access to that. So that's why I like running the energy count that I currently have. And last but not least, I think is Silent Lab and Field Blower are the other 2 cards that I really want to touch on that aren't really deck specific cards that I've included. Silent Lab is your answer to basically every bench barrier. Manaphy, Mew, Mr. Mime, if people are playing that. I think that's it, right? Is that all?
I feel like there's one more.
There's got to be one more. Any of like there's Submerge too. Submerge is bench barrier. All of the bench barrier effects, most of them are on basics. So Silent Lab is really what you're doing to shut. Wobbuffet. Wait, no. Wobbuffet's not bench barrier. No, what am I talking about?
Wobbuffet is ability lock.
It is, yeah. Which is also very relevant, yeah. But I'll get to that in a sec. Silent Lab is super good at shutting down bench barrier, as is Hex Maniac. This is sort of the only card that you have that's going to be an answer to Machoke, and with fighting getting a lot better, you should expect to see a lot of that Machoke. If you're playing this deck, you need to respect the Machoke. And if you prize Silent Lab, now you've got another out. You know what I mean? Like it's just a good effect to have in the deck. Being able to make sure that your Kyogre can actually do spread damage is important.
Not to mention that's technically an out to Machamp too. If you've set it up.
It's the only out to Machamp, pretty much. That's the other thing, is if you look at Kyogre and you say, wow, 4 energy to do 80 to the active, that is terrible, which is true.
Yeah.
So you really need to be able to turn off a bench barrier. In the same way, Sky Pillar is another card that's it's a air quote good tech against Kyogre, but Silent Lab answers that as well. If you put a Sky Pillar in play, you're still going to be looking for Silent Lab regardless. Field Blower also hits Sky Pillar, and it also hits Chaotic Swell, which is another important card that I think more bench barrier decks should be playing, because Kyogre has a hard time beating Chaotic Swell plus Mew, because you can't just play a Silent Lab.
You put on so much stress, because you have to make them find all their pieces that attach with the Kyogre, and then you also have to make them find the Field Blower first, then the Stadium.
Yep. There's a ton of moving pieces that Kyogre needs, so the more things that you require it to have, the better your chances are of slowing the game down long enough to last against Kyogre. That's really what you need to do. You either need to have a game plan that slows down Kyogre long enough to have all of your stuff ready to go in play, or you need to have a strategy that doesn't really matter if it gets hit by a Kyogre. So any setup deck with a bench barrier, I think bench barrier plus Chaotic Swell is a really good answer. Field Blower, however, is really, really important too, because it hits Fighting Fury Belt, it hits Cape of Toughness, it hits any tool off of a Garbodor. Garbodor is like the card that Kyogre cannot beat if it gets set up. You're gonna have a really, really, really hard time taking care of Garbodor. So you need your Field Blower is one of the most important cards in your deck. So having an opponent demand that card to be played early is a pretty bad spot to be in. Field Blower is also the only thing that gives you a real chance against a Metal deck that's set up. If Metal plays like Metal Core Barrier and sits behind a Caparajah, you're in really big trouble. If it puts up the Metal Goggles and a Metal Frying Pan and just throws a bunch of damage reduction tools, you're going to have a really hard time knocking those things out. So Field Blower, very important there too. You use that to... Basically, you only use Field Blower when you absolutely have to. So then
Field Blower is not a novelty that you get to like scrap an air balloon. It is like a life and death card.
Yeah, it's the card that lets your deck function, essentially, because most things that can lock Kyogre out of the game are going to be doing so using something that gets hit with Field Blower. So you need to really save this for when it's time to use it.
Arises,
Obviously, again, you're in a situation where you're looking at like an opening hand with you're not set up and you've got to research and you've got Field Blower. I mean, you got to ship it. Your priority is going to be moving your game plan forward. So you just kind of have to say, all right, hope they don't make me need this Field Blower that I'm getting rid of.
Right.
It is what it is. If Garbodor gets too good, you might start playing Tool Scrapper also, but that remains to be seen. I think that's it's a deck that not a lot of people are playing, so it depends on whether or not you're going to respect the Garbodor. Which, actually, thinking about it, that's probably something I should put in my deck, because I now have 3 people at my locals who are playing Garbodor, which should do pretty good. Like, I'm going to lose to them pretty regularly, I'm thinking, once they really learn the ins and outs of the deck. So that's probably a card to start playing.
Do you have anything else to say about your deck?
I do, actually. So I touched on this with Garbodor, but Ability Lock is the other really big thing that shuts this deck down. Drizzile, Inteleon, Shady Dealings doesn't work. Octillery doesn't work. Milotic doesn't work. Those are the 3 things that sort of make Kyogre actually get to attack. Being able to see more cards, draw through your deck, etc. Ability Lock is really, really, really hard to deal with. The biggest Ability Lock Pokemon right now are Galarian Weezing and Wobbuffet. and those two only work in the active. Silent Lab is an out to Wobbuffet, so there's that at least. That's an upside. But Weezing is in Dark. Dark is one of the best types right now. I could say that about anything, but Dark is really good.
Weezing's very capable.
Weezing can just sweep a whole team, right?
Weezing plus Guzzlord are pretty above average tools. In fact, they are probably some of the best tools that like push Dark's viability up.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. So you need to be able to answer a Weezing before you just lose the game to Guzzlord getting built up, right? So I am playing Escape Rope as a very that's my switch card of choice. Escape Rope to just push Weezing out of the active. Honestly, all you really need is to blow up Milotic once. Weezing doesn't return KO Kyogre, so if you can Escape Rope Milotic onto Kyogre, attack with Kyogre, they bring Weezing back up, you're fine. Like that's an okay situation. I would gladly trade 2 Kyogre attacks for Weezing coming back into the active any day of the week. Because it also knocks out Weezing too. Yeah. So yeah, super favorable there. Escape Rope, important card. I'm playing Counter Catcher for the same reason. Counter Catcher is just actually a really good card because Milotic puts you behind on prizes, so Counter Catcher is a great answer to pushing things out of the active. This doesn't work if Weezing gets set up before you can blow up Milotic, which means you're gonna need to sacrifice something. Something's gonna have to die, probably your Vulpix, whatever, it's fine, you'll deal. Vulpix goes down, turns Counter Catcher on, and you're off to the races. Counter Catcher is super good because Dark. Honestly, if the Guzzlord isn't ready to attack, gust up the Guzzlord, take a swing. It's really hard to move out of the active, and you're probably going to be able to attack again the next turn. So Counter Catcher, great card to use, just to put something that can't retreat into the active to guarantee a second Kyogre attack. Really big play. Similar vein is Guzma. Guzma's a really good. It's Guzma, right? You not only get to switch your dude to move your board around, but also getting the Weezing out of the active, super important. And then I am also playing, this is worth mentioning because it's such an important card to be able to beat this Weezing. Irida can search for Escape Rope. Peony searches for Escape Rope. You've got Versus Seeker to find both of those cards. Raihan and Teammates can both get you your Escape Rope or Counter Catcher. Raihan probably better with Counter Catcher and Teammates because you're going down on a prize to do that. That's sort of the plays that you're looking to make. If you're having a hard time drawing into Escape Rope, know that you have a lot of outs in your supporters to be able to find that. Against Dark, I will not aggressively play. Whoop, jeez, the scroll wheel. I will not aggressively play my Escape Rope. I will hold on to my Irida in hand. Like if they play a Coughing and I'm not set up, I might literally just hold Irida in hand instead of playing a supporter turn 2, just in case. Like as long as I'm still set up to attack turn 2, just so that I have the ability to push the Weezing out of the way if I need to. That is something that you have to respect a lot. So yeah, just something to be aware of there. That's sort of like the other card that you'll have a hard time beating. And I think that's mostly it. I do just want to talk about Lost Zone real quick. Splash Energy is a good anti-Lost Zone card. Or Lost City, I'm sorry. Lost City is the stadium that Lost Zones anything that gets knocked out. You lose Milotic if you use it while Lost City is in play. It just gets Lost Zone F, but whatever. And Splash Energy lets your Kyogre get back into your hand. Yeah, I mean, against Lost City, your play pattern just kind of has to be a little bit different. It just means you don't bench your Kyogre until you're ready to attack with it. You have to be a little bit careful about when you're playing Milotic. Make sure that if your opponent puts a Lost City in play, you have the ability to return knockout whatever they've got going on so that they're equally as hurt by the thing. Yeah, just basically having a bunch of attackers and playing a little bit smarter is going to be the best way to beat Lost City going forward. I think that's probably it. I did talk a whole bunch, but... Oh, wow.
Enough that
it kicked me out. That's fine.
Okay,
all right.
While you're logging in, there were a few things I wanted to add.
Yeah,
Mainly about, like, how certain types of disruption affect you. we already talked about ability lock quite a bit, so I won't touch on that. What do you feel about bench disruption? Cards like Avery or the Parallel City, cards along the line of that, how do they affect your own game plans here?
It is annoying. Like I'm sure every GLC player would agree with me on that.
Yes.
However, it's usually pretty easy to pick out what you wanna keep if they play an Avery into you. Like you can discard your Kyogre to Avery. It's honestly fine. You really want to keep your Feebas, like a turn 2 Avery, right? Let's say I Basculin turn 2 and set up, I've got Basculin active. I set up Feebas, Sobble, Remoraid, maybe I've got Kyogre or something like that, and that's just what my bench is looking like, right? And someone plays Avery, I am probably going to lose either the Remoraid or the Kyogre. I'll leave Remoraid if I've got Peony, but generally speaking, you want to keep the Sobble and Feebas. The real big problem comes when they go Avery and then Boss, and then you're like, well, that sucks real bad, because it is bad, actually. That's a very fair point. Avery causes problems. Usually this deck can function after an Avery. I'm going to be honest with you, Parallel City, I would genuinely be more concerned if they played it on the damage reduction side. I would rather have a 3... Good lord. I'd rather have a bench limited to 3 than only have Kyogre do 60 damage. Because Parallel City is an AoE effect, too.
Oh my god, so it affects even the bench damage, too?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, wow.
It's a good...
I wasn't even considering that when I brought that card up.
Yeah, no, I know. People don't think of it like that. They're like, oh, cool, Parallel City, I'm going to limit your bench. And then I say, all right, cool. I mean, I'll keep Sobble, Feebas, and Kyogre. Now what? Right? You knock out my Basculin, or you don't, and then I just retreat it into Kyogre, and then we're off to the races anyway, right? Parallel City is also kind of a bit weaker because, you know, you're already trying to fish for Silent Lab anyway, so not the worst. Yeah, it's certainly like, it's like a hiccup, I guess, right? Like, it's not, don't expect an Avery or Parallel City to win you the game against Kyogre. It's not going to. It's just going to be annoying, is probably the best way to put it. Because it'll, that's the other thing. So what you're doing if you Avery a big Kyogre bench is you're demanding the use of Rescue Stretcher, Revive, or Super Rod. And I've only got 3 of these things, right? So if I have to discard my Kyogre to keep my draw support in play, then I feel really bad about that, because it's going to burn the Revive that's going to let me easily get Kyogre back later, you know? So it's a good option. Like, it's not bad. You just don't expect it to win you the game. That's all.
You already covered Chaotic Swell as a tech card and how you play around it using the Field Blower. But on 2 separate topics involving Chaotic Swell, how do you feel about Lost Sweeper in your deck? You talked about Tool Scrapper, but Lost Sweeper also gives you another out to opposing Chaotic Swell, as it allows you to put down your Silent Lab.
I don't remember what that does. Is it Lost Zone a card from your hand and then Faba something?
Yes.
Only Stadium and Tool, right? Not Special Energy?
Yeah, not Special Energy.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd say I really don't want to Lost Zone things. Like, there are cards that are expendable, but for the most part, you really you like all the cards that you have in your deck. Like, I'm not playing cards because I don't want to run them. Like, this is a very tight 60. I've been playing this list for like, I don't know, 5-6 months at this point in time. Like, it's been a while since I picked this one up.
I only thought I'd mention it because you brought out Tool Scrapper.
No, right. I was thinking about it. Chaotic Swell is weird. Like, it would be better. Like, Lost Sweeper is better than Tool Scrapper. Oh shit. I was gonna say specifically against Chaotic Swell, but I guess that's not true. Stadiums are like one of your biggest ways to lose the game. Like, if your opponent sticks a Rough Seas or a Crystal Cave, that's so bad. It's so hard to come back from that. Right.
This technically also plays around Elucidate as well.
That's true. You know, maybe it is worth considering. I think I would say it's matchup dependent, I guess. And like, so I guess whatever you expect to see, whatever's hot in the meta right now. Like, if Dragon, I don't even think Dragon's playing Crystal Cave though.
If I played it, I can literally just pull my list.
I don't know. Like, Metal definitely.
No, I have Sword Bounce. Yeah.
Metal, you're losing the game if they get a Crystal Cave for more than one turn. That's just it. So, and Metal does like to play Lusamine, doesn't it? I think, isn't that like a card that Metal tends to play? So
I love Lusamine. It grounds you back so many things. They're just so vital for my core gameplay.
Lost Sweeper seems pretty solid for that. And it's good against Garbodor as well. So maybe that is worth considering over Tool Scrapper. Tool Scrapper I think would be better specifically against Metal, because you get between Field Blower and Tool Scrapper, you get to take out 4 tools. And Metal plays a lot of damage reduction tools, and usually a way to recover them with like maybe Lana's Rod or Echo. I don't know if it's playing those, but I've seen some Metal lists have ways to recover their damage reduction tools, so that's something that you should be aware of. Yeah, I think that's worth considering. You might have convinced me, honestly. I think it pairs well into Lusamine, it pairs well into Chaotic Swell, and it pairs well into Garbodor, which are 3 cards that I think give Kyogre a lot of problems. So yeah, fair enough. That honestly might be the move instead of Tool Scrapper. Faba was a card I was considering too, like actual Faba. For the same reason, but I would rather play Lost Sweeper over Faba.
Gotcha. And onto another highly specific tech card. What about Chaotic Swell in your deck? Because this also explicitly helps you play around Lost City, which can end your game plan for Kyogre. It also plays around Sky Pillar too, which isn't super common, but just throw that out there. I just want to know your opinions on Chaotic Spell in this deck.
I think in my deck, it's not a good option because I don't know. I think that is maybe suited better for
Grant Manley's list.
Grant Manley's, yeah, just because his deck is a slower, more steady, more stable, right? That's the word I've been using a lot of. Grant Manley's list looks to build a more stable board state than mine does. I think that's definitely a lot better. Also, his list is a lot more weak to Lost City. I built this list with Lost City in mind. I have extra attackers, and my plan is to just not put Kyogre into play until I am ready to attack with it. So I'm already playing around Lost City in A, my build of the deck, and B, in the just with how I'm playing the game. So I think that's something worth it's worth considering in other variations that aren't that are more Kyogre centric, but I think in my version it's not something that I would want to play. It's not a bad card, like genuinely not a bad idea. It also makes you pretty weak to bench barrier also, because you would then need to play Hex Maniac, and you don't want to play Hex Maniac. Like you have better supporters, so there's that.
I think the discussion was good anyway.
Oh no, I agree. I think
it
that's
lets
totally
people
fair.
know that, like, hey, this build is less acceptable to Lost City because of the exact reasons. This is why my deck is neither a Chaotic as well. Things like that.
I'm working on a build of Kyogre. I don't know if I told you about this. I'm working on a build of Kyogre that is just in general less susceptible to a lot of the weaknesses that I've pointed out with the deck. Instead of being Kyogre-centric, it is a deck that has Kyogre in it.
Gotcha.
I actually can go... I'll save it for another time. I actually think that deck is going to be pretty sweet. And I think if it doesn't play Milotic currently, so it's also kind of like if cards do get banned from this, it'll probably be Milotic, so it's a little bit resilient to that as well. So that's a list that I'm looking forward to playing in the future. Or at the very least testing it out. But from there, I think that's probably
I don't have too many other comments about the deck itself.
Yeah,
I know you wanted to cover matchup spreads too, so
this is true.
That before we take up too much time.
No, I'm looking at the timer, and it looks like we're getting closer to an hour. So maybe it makes sense to split this into a different video.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we just do like a matchup spread video too. I think because that's at least like.
I mean, we can spend another hour talking about highly specific things.
I feel like it wouldn't be an hour. I don't know.
I'm joking around.
But no, honestly, I should be able to go over this pretty quick. All right, let's do this real quick.
Okay.
Let me turn this down a little bit.
So, I don't want to like super generalize all the types, but I kind of want to.
No, I think that's fair. So give me one sec.
That really deserves to be split is probably.
Here's the music credit, by the way.
That really needs to be split is like possibly just like Water and then Amazing Kyogre, because they play sort of differently with different cores.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a fair thing to do.
Yeah.
It's a little bit harder to do here, but okay. I've actually done this before. Let me find the DM that I have, and I can kind of see what changes as well. Let's see.
Keep in mind, this is for the Lost Origin format, which is the latest format to be released as of making this video.
I actually am going to consider the new Kyogre in this as well. I'm going to consider the new Kyogre and the new Crobat, that both aren't going to be released until was it Silver Tempest?
Yeah,
I think they're worth mentioning here.
Okay, that's fair.
Okay, so this is what this is gonna look like. So I actually can make. All right. Let's see. So here is what I. I'm gonna label the tiers.
Okay. You should probably start with the least complicated ones first.
Let me turn this. Oh god, I hate how that looks. Let me switch the dark mode back on. It's terrible. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. So start with how does this make sense? Do we want Kyogre's good matchups on top or on bottom?
Dude, let's put good matchups on top and then losing matchups on bottom.
Okay.
Make it like +1 and then -1, and then 0 in the middle, obviously.
Okay, that makes sense. 2, I guess. I don't know. I'll probably relabel these because it's easier for me to do.
I also all you need to know is some of these are winning and some of these are super winning.
Okay. Yeah. So how I categorized it before was losing with a decent setup, losing or tough with a very strong setup, a few scary things that can be played around, and probably pretty easy. That was how I did my tier list before. So it's
well, let's talk about some of the techs that you should pretty much always be beating.
Let's start with grass. That's easy.
Okay.
So I personally think that grass is one of the tougher matchups for Kyogre. And it's one of the most popular decks, so it's definitely something you need to be aware of. In my previous matchup spread tier list, I actually put grass as the worst matchup. I think that's probably fair. I think water and I'm gonna throw this together real quick. I'm just gonna throw stuff here and see what happens. I think it probably looks something like this. This is tough. I'm gonna put Psychic here.
It's somewhere in the losing category.
I think
-1.
I think existing Psychic builds Kyogre does really good against, but
I think people simply need to adapt.
It has a ton of tools that Psychic isn't really playing around, or that
I feel like hypothetically Psychic should have one of the best matchups. You got like Bench Barrier. Don't you have like a Pokemon that like keeps the stadium attack too?
Yeah, the Gothitelle, I think, right? Is that what it is? Yeah.
Like if you're playing like some Gothitelle stuff, you just like break the ability for you to play Silent Lab.
So it's weird. I don't even agree with that because here's what I'm kind of basing this on. This is sort of like my rough tier list. Important caveat. This is this tier list that I've got right here is based on Kyogre if the opponent has a good draw. What Kyogre does is punish decks for having inconsistencies. If your deck is off to a slow start, for example, if Grass finds like Roselia turn 1 and they just start their turn 1 with Roselia and then their next turn they get to bridge it and find 4, but you've got Kyogre online already, you don't really you're fine. Like there's no issue with that at all. You're gonna win that game. Kyogre is built on punishing inconsistency, which is why, for example, I have Metal here and not in here. Because if Metal set up perfectly every game, Metal would beat Kyogre every game. However, that's not the reality of the situation. Metal does not have the draw support to be able to consistently set itself up. So it's going to lose sometimes to just, hey, here's Jirachi in play. I benched my Q-Fan and maybe a Honedge. Pass the turn. Okay, you've got your Kyogre ready to attack next turn. Here I am going into my turn. I got you. Here I am going into my turn. Jirachi's going to look for something, and it doesn't find me in evolution. I'm now going to lose this game because I just got off to a slow start. Fighting has a similar issue as well. Fighting has a ton of low-maintenance attackers that can all KO Kyogre. Super good, very valuable. It has the it has the best bench barrier in the format in terms of Machoke. Not only does it have the best bench barrier, but it turns into one of the tankiest Pokemon in the format, the Machamp, that has 300 HP, which is nearly impossible for a Kyogre deck to kill. That is, on paper, if that gets set up, Kyogre's going to have a really big problem, but that's not going to be the case. Metal famously has no draw support other than a Lucario that isn't really good. So
there's a Lucario that draws?
Yeah, it's a black and white promo on evolution, draw 2 cards.
Oh my god. Yeah, the only support that Metal really has for draw is Amazing Jirachi. That's literally it.
Yep. So the problem with that is that if your Jirachi whiffs, it doesn't find you a good supporter, or doesn't find you an evolution, or you can't find your energy in time to knock out Kyogre, you're just not going to win that game. There's nothing that you can do. So, but again, I played a game where they go turn 1, attach Metal Energy to Q-Fant, pass. Turn 2, evolve into Capparaja, attach Metal Energy, hit Kyogre for 60, pass. I hit him for 80. Capparaja has an attack that it can't do unless it has X damage on it or whatever. It's a Capparaja that can't attack if it has 8 damage counters or something like that. So I had to use my Field Blower to get rid of Metal Core Barrier, set up Inteleon to put damage on it, because they knocked out my Kyogre they just hit 60 and then next turn 60, and then they were set up to just start swinging for 220. They played I Marnied them into, they just played Mallow and Lana, healed the damage off of the Capparaja, switched back into the active, swung to 220. I just scooped. You cannot beat that. So there are some outs that your deck can, there are some board states that your deck just simply cannot beat. But it's balanced by the fact that the deck is built to go fast enough that you're not going to let your opponent get to that board state. So this is sort of based on, actually, this tier list is kind of based on, you go into a tournament, what percentage of, actually, yeah, what am I doing? This should just be, let's say 50-50. We'll go somewhere in the range of
30,
90. We'll go 75 to 95% Kyogre. We'll say this is I would say this is actually probably a better way to do this. 75 to 95% Kyogre losing, Kyogre winning, and then this one should be I guess I'd have to go 74 because that's how that works. Probably closer to, God, I can't do math. 50
just
to
do
75.
55 to 65.
Yeah, that seems reasonable. 65%. Yeah, that seems reasonable.
I'm a little surprised the FR needed there. I know it has a stage 1 bench barrier, but
I am actually, with this new criteria, I'm moving fighting up.
Okay.
I don't think it really has a lot to do there. I think so, and then I think in current builds, Kyogre is probably here. I actually, okay. The important caveat is that I think most types are gonna be in here if Kyogre pops off. Like, Kyogre just has the ability to just do crazy stuff. Like, if you go first and get a turn 1 attack, or a turn 1 Feebas into a turn 2 attack, it's really, really, really hard for most things to come back from that. These decks have tools to do that, but you have to be able to get the tools when you need them.
I will say, having actually tested Dragon into this matchup, I think Dragon is losing.
You think it's losing?
Not as fire. Yeah, it's not fun.
I was going to argue the opposite. I've been playing against Dragon at locals, and I've been starting to feel like the matchup is not as bad as I thought it was initially. In my original tier list, I had Dragon somewhere around here, like in this range. Probably it would have been here, but after playing like a good amount of games, I feel like Dragon does have the tools to do a lot with it. They have revenge attack. Like, if you ever attack with Kyogre, you should expect for your Kyogre to get knocked out in return, whether or not you took any knockouts. Drampa will always revenge kill. Drudigan has an actual revenge attack. If the deck is playing
Drudigan, Regidrago should all be able to get over
right.
those.
Yep, Regidrago, Ultra Necrozma, and you can return KO pretty much all of these things, especially after Kyogre attacks. But Dragon is built to have all of these one-of attackers that just kind of go in as a glass cannon, probably gets knocked out, and then you just pick a new one, or you recover it because most of your attackers are basics and you've got relatively low maintenance.
Right.
If a Dragon deck Kyogre isn't built to do that. So if Kyogre is trading with a Drampa after its first attack, Kyogre is going to be in a worse spot than the Dragon deck is, because that Drampa is probably getting another kill. Unless you can set up like an Inteleon play. Dragon also has the ability where if you give Dragon too much time to set up, it can set up Dragonite. It can set up
That's a Garchomp, which gets a free attack.
Yeah, it can set up Dragonite. It can set up the Garchomp, which is a big deal. It can set up the what's it called? Just the, like, a Guzman Hala gets you an attack for 120 basically. You can't give Dragon that much time either, which is a pretty big issue. Lightning, I would say, is I shouldn't jump around. I'm sorry. That's sort of where I feel Dragon is. I honestly think this matchup can go either way. I need to play the matchup a little bit more. Again, like, there's some really good Dragon players at locals that have been putting me through the ringer. I think I'm like 1-1 against Dragon, or like 2-1 or something like that. It's weird. I don't know. Honestly, like, I just need to play the matchup a little bit more. I think it should be Dragon definitely has the tools to win. It just needs to sort of get going. Because
for me, it was just my biggest issue was just like it's really hard to play any of my support Pokemon in this matchup unless if I get like the rare candy going first. And so I'm like almost entirely reliant on my big basics, which do get the job done occasionally, but they are also very they do require a little bit. Like Goosehala and Rhyhorn could only get me so far.
Right. Give me 1 quick second real quick. I think our call audio was a bit off. I'm going to reconnect.
Hi.
Hi. Just a bit crunchy, that's all.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, we're chilling. Okay, cool. Hopefully it wasn't that bad the whole time. It just kind of got a little bit bad there. You were saying that Dragon doesn't have the tools to... Wait, what were you saying?
Yeah, I'm not sure Dragon can completely sustain multiple Kyogre suites, just because they're so limited. Like, unless I'm going first, it's really hard for me to commit to putting down a Gibble or a Dratini and trying to rare candy it. That's like my issue. And like the basic attackers are good, like you said, but I'm not sure because like you need Goosehala to get Double Dragon, or you need Rhyhorn to continue the attack. So it's pretty stressful on the Dragon player. Where I think as the Kyogre player, not only do you have the alternative attackers that help out quite a bit, but you also have Kyogre, which just stops me from playing my early setup mons. And it just stops me from putting my support on super early on.
I think that's fair, yeah. It genuinely in that matchup, I feel like it's just, did Kyogre get to attack early? If so, you're probably doing okay because you probably swept up all of the support Pokemon. And if not, then you're in a... It's weird because all the support Pokemon are still going to die to 2 Amazing Surges.
Yeah.
You've just been able to set up your board a lot better in doing so. The other thing that I'll say that I think is very relevant is that Dragon has a lot of good basic attackers, similar to Grass, where you have the ability to stagger your attackers so that like you play Drampa and I Amazing Surge, knock out a Gibble, you come up and Revenge Kill with Druddigon, then I come in and you bench Drampa that turn. So it has no damage on it. Then I come in and attack again. Now Drampa comes in and gets to do damage this time. But it's fresh, so you've got plenty of time to build it up. I don't know. I feel like staggering attackers is something that a lot of decks don't do. They kind of just throw their stuff on the board and just say, all right, cool, I found these things. I don't want to lose them because it's a singleton format. I don't want to get Marnied and lose access to my cards. Or I have a Nest Ball in hand, so I need to play it now to thin it out of the deck or just to clean up my draw. I don't know. People tend to play their hands a lot more, and against Kyogre, it's a habit that you really need to be very careful about doing. That is why I've put Grass so high.
Yeah, I agree. Grass's support Pokemon don't get knocked out like the Thwackies and the Grottles, and then like their Pokemon don't like get to KO'd by fucking Amazing Surge anyways.
It's weird though. It's weird because if what is it? Rillaboom has 170. So, Kyogre does have a line where you can go, okay, Kyogre attack with Fighting Fury Belt into an active Rillaboom, and those 2 attacks kill Rillaboom, it kills Kricketune, which is important because if you've got Kricketune, then your math is fucked anyway. So, kills Kricketune, it kills Zarude, and it kills Genesect. That is not nothing. It also picks up any unevolved Pokemon that are there as well. So if all 3 of the... And it kills Venusaur. It kills Venusaur too. So I think Venusaur is 160. So if you can line that up, a board state where you can knock out Kricketune, Rillaboom, both of the basic attackers at the same time, you can win that matchup. I played a Kyogre into Grass game where my opponent was just rolling me over, and I got 1 attack, and then I got another attack. And that second attack literally won me the game, because I just wiped all their attackers off the board because they overbenched. Torterra doesn't die. However, Torterra doesn't do any damage if it doesn't have other evolutions in play. So, being able to wipe their board... Torterra, unironically, is not the scariest thing in that deck. It's Rillaboom for Kyogre, because Rillaboom just sets everything up turn after turn. So if you're able to KO Rillaboom and they don't have an attacker to respond with, you're going to probably win the game just by attacking again with Kyogre. That's the only route to winning against Grass that I've found, other than sweeping them very early. If Grass gets off to a slow start and they put like Grottle in play and Grottle eats a hit, but they lost like their Grookey because they couldn't find Thwacky, or they got Kricketot down but they couldn't get into Kricketune, and now all of their support Pokemon are like half of all. You can win games there if you get off to like an early turn there, but other than that, you're in a really bad spot. If Grass knows how to stagger their bench and gets off to a decent start, you're probably losing that matchup. The only real answer that you have is like 1 Amazing Surge and then hitting for 120 with your Inteleon, with your Basculin. Basculin is good against Torterra because it can confuse, so that might buy you a turn. Torterra is pretty big, so it's hard to retreat. That's kind of like what your game plan has to look like. It's really just turbo, or you're probably going to be in a really tough spot unless they misplay an overbench. Yeah, I think I went over Metal. Metal is has crazy tools to beat Kyogre, but it just needs good draw support. I think even with like a decent draw, as long as Kyogre doesn't turbo out, Metal's probably gonna do fine. Metal has to like really brick to have like no chance. Let's see, like as long as Metal can kill the first Kyogre, they're probably in a pretty okay spot because there isn't much that Kyogre can do.
I most definitely agree that those are probably the 3 hardest decks for Amazing Kyogre. And since like Amazing Kyogre isn't on here, how do you feel about the mirror match?
I don't think Manaphy's a good card, so decks that are running Manaphy, it seems bad. I wouldn't like it adds another level of like, ooh, I want Manaphy so that I can't, but it really doesn't come down to that. Kyogre decks are not built to withstand a Kyogre attack, believe it or not. So it's really, I actually think that the Kyogre mirror is the same as the Raikou matchup too, Amazing Rare Raikou. It is literally whoever gets their first Amazing Rare attack is gonna win that game.
Okay, that's very funny to think about.
Yeah, it's literally just a race to see who gets it set up first. And that's why I put Lightning in 50-50, because sure, Lightning is probably going to be knocking out most of your Pokemon in one hit because of weakness, but you're also knocking out most of theirs. I don't think any of like the main metal Pokemon or main electric Pokemon have more than 120 HP. Raikou has 110, which means Articuno can knock it out with 2 coin flips. Regieleki has 120, I think. Tabu Koko's got 120, and the spread doesn't really matter that much because it's knocking you out anyway. Actually, this is something that helps my deck. The Dynamotor Pokemon have 90 HP, which means Articuno can clean them up, and it doesn't have weakness, so Articuno is, again, a really good tool. If you get one Kyogre attack off, Articuno can just clean up against Amazing Rare decks, as long as Raikou isn't in play. You really need to, like, if Raikou attacks twice, you're gonna lose the game no matter what. Like, yeah, duh. That's the only matchup where I think Manaphy would actually be good, but it is what it is. Yeah, Lightning doesn't seem that bad. Hydro Pump is tough to beat. Inteleon is really good. It knocks out everything in your deck except for your own Inteleon. Wailord is really tough to beat. Current Vivid Voltage Wailord requires you to attack once with Kyogre and then clean up with 120 damage later. That's not to count any healing from Rough Seas. If Rough Seas gets in play, you now no longer get to 2-hit Wailord. Rough Seas period is a really hard card to beat, so Water has access to that. Let me think. Water might be playing... No, Water. Paralyticity doesn't matter there. Or it probably doesn't. Water has Frostmoth, which does have 90 HP. It has Octillery, which you can eat. Manaphy doesn't really help because of Silent Lab. Water's also weak to Hex Maniac, which you also play, which is like something. It's a tough matchup, because if that Wailord gets set up, you're in really big trouble. Rare Candy Blastoise is tough. You have to Silent Lab the Squirtle to be able to actually knock it out. Fighting Fury Belt on Squirtle is unironically not a bad play. I don't know if you've thought about doing that, but that's something worth mentioning.
Okay. And like the only other thing I have to ask about is about colorless and fighting.
I've never played against colorless. I unironically, I don't know how that matchup looks. This is colorless attacking. Colorless control is like the most right here matchup of all time.
Okay.
There is nothing in colorless's deck that can take more than one hit. Literally, like everything dies in one hit. Skitty dies if Kyogre attacks, which is terrible for you. Bunnelby doesn't live. I think Minccino lives at like 80, and Snorlax. But you can't play a game off of Minccino and Snorlax. Shining Arceus is okay, but Silent Lab is a thing that you get.
Yeah, I was about to say, I don't even know what colorless decks look like. It's definitely the type I'm the least experienced with. So.
The reason I picked up Kyogre was because I was trying to learn colorless control and played against Kyogre, and I was like, you literally cannot win this matchup. Like, things have to go tragically wrong for Kyogre to lose against colorless control. So, I don't want to play a deck that auto loses to one of the best decks. I felt like this was like in Brilliant Stars meta, but I was still like, yeah, this is the deck. This is an easy top 3 deck that people aren't really playing right now, because people weren't playing Kyogre in Brilliant Stars. Yeah, it seemed like a really good card to play to beat control. Colorless attacking, I have very, very limited experience in that matchup. The one time I played, I forgot, I have played against colorless attacking before. Slacking is a beating, but you kind of have to have the slacking. And it also is sort of susceptible to the same old, if Kyogre attacks twice, it's probably winning. That was, like, I think I played against someone, attacked once early, and then spent the rest of the game behind Snorlax until one turn where I went Escape Rope, Evolve Milotic, pop it into Kyogre, attack, clear 5 things off your bench that already had damage on it from the first attack, and then you don't have anything in play to attack with again. So it's another... my experience with that matchup was against someone who wasn't experienced against Kyogre. So I think that there definitely were things they could have done to play around it. And to that point, slacking is a much, much slower Weezing or Wobbuffet. So it's something that I think that I've already been teching against just to not beat Weezing. And Colorless is worse at doing Weezing than Weezing is, if that makes sense. So
yeah,
it's something that I'm already prepared for. But again, anything with like big basic attackers that can kind of just one-shot everything is something that's probably going to have a decent chance against Kyogre, especially if like Boss gets in the mix. You know what I mean? Like taking out exactly what they want to take out and sort of getting on board before Kyogre gets to do its thing is pretty big. Again, that's another matchup where all the support Pokemon are going to get hit by Kyogre and then get hit by Articuno pretty reliably. So, hard to say. Articuno really is like the big equalizer here as well. Worth talking about too, Fire. It's probably here actually. I don't think it's as bad as I used to think it was, but
in order to not leak your secret tag, but there's a card that Fire could be played that significantly helps this matchup.
Is it the Oricorio?
Yeah, well, use that.
Yeah,
now.
No, that's fine. People have been starting to play Oricorio recently, which is I thought it was like a clean answer. It's not as clean of an answer as I thought. It takes 2 energy, so
they have to like Volt Base and switch out.
Yeah, like Magma Basin plus switch out. So it does actually require a lot more than I realized. But you also have like Welder to Oricorio turn 1 to knock out a Feebas is like a really good play.
Yeah.
Also worth mentioning that any one of these types that has a Pokemon that places 3 damage counters on a basic for 1 energy should do pretty good into Kyogre if you can if you play enough switch outs and energy and ways to find that, because if you can just donk Feebas and then set up your rest of your board, you're going to be in a really good spot.
Yeah.
Same deal as Toy Catcher. That's another card that I think a lot of people need to be playing, or at least considering if they're weak to Kyogre.
Yeah, I think Bonnie could definitely consider it because they could grab it off the Karina.
Yeah. True. Honestly, anything, because one of the complaints about Kyogre is that, well, I have to knock out Feebas and I need to be able to boss it, and it's hard to boss Feebas and then also set up an attacker. So if you instead play a draw card or a consistency card instead that lets you potentially see Toy Catcher and then also set up your board, that's a good answer. Because Toy Catcher is just a clean gust on Feebas, and then as long as you have something that can do 30 damage to it, you're cooking. Dark is very similar to Colorless, but has more, I think it's more threatening to Kyogre than Colorless is. Wheezing is a big deal. It can come out turn 1. You need to have answers for Wheezing in terms of Escape Rope. But Dark is another type that, Wheezing buys time for Guzzlord, which can just win games on its own. Guzzlord knocks out basically everything in your deck. Pretty big problem. So Dark is another type that you really need to have a game plan against. Most of my deck is teched to answer Wheezing. Like, the reason I'm playing Escape Rope and Counter Catcher and a lot of ways to search those cards out is specifically to respect the Wheezing.
Yeah, Wheezing's a pretty good card, as we know from our last raid.
On the other hand, on the other side of the matchup, Dark doesn't really have anything that lives 2 Kyogre attacks. So again, it's really just alright, if you got a Wheezing, alright, you need to turn that into Guzzlord winning the game ASAP, because if you can manually attach to Kyogre, you know what I mean? And if you knock out something with Wheezing, now I can go attach Kyogre, attach Counter Energy, Aqua Patch, and we're cooking. Now I'm attacking, and I don't care that you have a Wheezing in play because I've got my attacker going. And now your whole board is going to get wiped pretty quickly. Dark doesn't get access to damage reduction or healing inherently, so Dark is probably going to be a type that struggles a bit there. On the other hand, and I actually, we'll move into this now. I think this is really the last type that I have to talk about.
Psychic and Fighting.
Psychic.
I didn't hear you say too much about Fighting.
Fighting, I think this was when you had to step away. Fighting is pretty similar to Metal, but it doesn't have the damage reduction stuff. Basically, Fighting is probably here, honestly. Just because it doesn't have the setup, and even if it does get set up, Kyogre has answers. I honestly feel like this is still a really tough matchup, but if a good support Pokemon gets printed, it probably goes up here.
Yeah, it doesn't help that Fighting is not in the best of spots right now. I believe, besides Fairy and Metal, because people don't know how to play Metal on Limitless, it's like the worst. Yeah, so the rankings on Limitless is Fairy. Okay, well, I'm not looking at that because Grass is the 3rd worst deck.
Probably just because there's a lot of people who play it.
My bad, that's matchup charts. Let me go here. Okay, yeah, so it goes to Fairy, Metal, and Fighting.
Yeah, that's what I think most people would put as the worst types. Oh, I never talked about Fire either. Okay, so I've got
Psychic and Fire.
Yeah, well, I'll stop with Psychic. Like, that'll be where I end. So we'll briefly touch on Fighting. What I said was Fighting has a very similar game plan to Metal, where you kind of just if you get set up, you're probably in a good spot, but if not, it's kind of tough. The Hitmontop spread deck is probably pretty solid against Kyogre, as long as you stagger your bench. That's probably a pretty good answer. But again, it's like you have to find those pieces, and Kyogre's doing its thing very consistently and finding answers.
I feel like by the time you get the Hitmontop, the game's over.
Yeah, but it'll probably be over one way or the other. Hard to say. I haven't done, like, again, the matchup is, I haven't played a lot of it. I think probably the Hitmontop deck probably has the best chance against, well, no, I mean, honestly, fighting decks just generally have, like, a lot of tools that are pretty good. Like, they have tons of, like, super low energy attackers that just kill Kyogre. But it's just finding those things, you know what I mean? Like, you have to find everything that you're trying to get set up. So, I don't know, it's tough. Fire, I'm putting it here mostly because of weakness. Kyogre doesn't really have to try that hard to do stuff. Like, if Kyogre can just, like, gust Charizard and then attack, and it's like, wow, that sucks really bad.
They can send out a Pokemon that's, like, not gonna get 2 KM, basically.
Yeah, it's like Ho-Oh is the good attacker there, and it costs energy to attack, and the 50 snipe isn't that good, because it costs, like, it is, but it doesn't really do that much.
It's not enough.
Rally back Entei is pretty good. That's, like, not a bad option, but again, it's like This is stuff Kyogre can play around, and everything in that deck is getting revenge KO'd in return. So that's the downside there. It is definitely tough for fire, because you can chain stuff together pretty well, but it's also like, oh cool, so I've set up my Roast Reveal and Magcargo Engine, and Kyogre attacked me one time, and now if I get Gusted or Kyogre attacks again, or Articuno, oh my god, Articuno attacking for weakness into that matchup is so bad, because it's two prizes for like 1 heads. It's tough. This is real, like that Articuno shines a lot here. But yeah, fire just sort of like, I don't know. There are things that it can do to help the matchup, and I've seen, like, people have been doing pretty well against Kyogre. Like, I think there's a fire player in the Tricky Gym Discord who I think played against 3 Kyogres and beat like 2 of them or something like that in one tournament. So like, you can do good. I think he was the guy who was playing the Oricorio, so that's definitely a good answer. There are things that fire can do also. Most of them, actually, fire might be a good toy catcher deck too, because a lot of fire's basics can just hit for 30. Like Ember is usually like 30 discard and energy. You're fine with that. That's totally cool. So
that's true.
That might be something worth considering. Because the Roast Reveal Magcargo engine is, if it gets set up, it's resilient to an Amazing Surge. And that's probably a matchup where Kyogre is going second because it's relatively safe. So you're not worried about getting like Donk turn 1. You can probably have a chance to get your evolutions in play. Fairy is tough because it doesn't do a lot of damage. Everything dies to 2 Kyogre hits. You get bench
Fairy LMAO.
I don't even hate Fairy. Like it copy, like, you have bench barrier, which is not bad. Granbull wants to have damage counters on it to do big damage, so that's somewhat relevant. Gardevoir can do damage, but the problem is that everything dies to 2 Kyogre hits, so you need to be able to actually kill Kyogre. Mimikyu has Copycat, which can copy a Kyogre attack. However, Fairy doesn't really do spread damage, and most of Kyogre's pieces aren't really going to die to 80 spread damage. So
just once.
Yeah, just once. That's like the main idea behind it. If you can Mimikyu copy Kyogre twice, that's actually probably a winning situation. Kyogre isn't really built to eat 2 Amazing Surges without Manaphy. So that's a thing you could do. However, you're probably not living long enough to do that. It's just a tough matchup. Like, it is what it is. Fairy's big thing is that it doesn't do well. Okay, one of the upsides, one of the good things Fairy has going for it is that it genuinely does have a very good support engine. Florges is one of the best support Pokemon, I think, in general. But it just doesn't have the damage output to really keep up with power creep. Like, if I were to make a matchup chart for Fairy, I would probably have it doing pretty well into a lot of things. Like, it has tools to beat a lot of decks. It just loses to Grass and Water, which is, like, terrible. Because it's like, those are the 2 biggest decks.
Right.
However, Kyogre doesn't really have things with a lot of HP. So, Fairy can probably get over the hurdle if it's setting up pretty well and Kyogre's not doing too great. So, seems beatable. Not the worst. You definitely want to play Mr. Mime, so there's that. Fairy's also playing Parallel City, so you can kind of get some damage reduction in there. Yeah, honestly, like, it seems like it could be worse, but probably still pretty bad. Okay, and so I alluded to this with Dark, but Psychic is going to be the last type, and I think in the future, Psychic is going to move up here.
I feel like Psychic, hypothetically, has, like, every tool it could use to, like, specifically counterpick against Kyogre.
Absolutely.
It doesn't need to, but, like, it could.
No, it doesn't. So, there's, like, 2 different kinds of Psychic builds right now. There's, like, your general, just big dudes. Oh, no, there's 3. There's, like, your big dudes Psychic, like, Gallade with Buddy Catch, Necrozma, Deoxit, like special energy, just dumping big dudes on the board, swinging for damage. There's a spread version, which is pretty good, and then there's the Garbodor version. And I think the Garbodor version should do really, really well into Kyogre, because a Garbodor Psychic is going to be playing into a lot of other disruption cards. You're not just playing Garbodor, you're playing the Spiritomb that prevents basics from attacking. You're playing the Chaos Wheel Mismagius that prevents people from playing special energy tools in stadiums. You're playing the Chimecho. Have you seen the Chimecho from Crimson Invasion, dude?
No, it doesn't.
Let me pull it up.
I have Locky up. I can look it up.
Chimecho from Crimson Invasion. Well, I'll pull it up for people. Bell of Silence. Your opponent can't play any Pokemon that has an ability from their hand during their next turn.
Well,
What? There are so few decks that have clean answers to this. So if you are setting up your Chimecho, so normally what you're going to do if you don't have abilities as Kyogre is just say, well, I mean, that sucks. Kyogre's probably not getting built up, but I'm going to just evolve my Inteleon and just start doing damage with it. You can't even do that against the Chimecho. It's got an ability. It's just bad. Makes it very hard to get to the late game as a Kyogre deck if you're playing a bunch of hate pieces and stuff like that. Garbodor turning off abilities in the late game means that Kyogre's going to have a really hard time setting up. So all Psychic needs is like a couple nukes that can just say, yeah, cool, like I've got this disruption going on. I'm taking my time. I'm building up my board. Now I'm going to come in and swing 120 and gust up your Kyogre, knock it out. Now what do you have to respond to this? You probably don't have much. That's sort of the idea. I think when decks start playing more disruption cards, that's going to be pretty big. Speaking of disruption cards, that's what I was alluding to with Dark. Typical Dark build is going to have a hard time beating. It's going to have a hard time getting to a late game comfortably against Kyogre in a match that doesn't involve Guzzlord. But if you are playing cards like the Alolan Muck that discards items, you can hit Kyogre's recovery items. There are only 3 of them. You can hit Battle Compressor. You can hit Aqua Patch, which is an energy attachment, basically. You can hit Professor's Letter, which means that you can't search for energy off of items. There are genuinely a lot of very scary cards in this singleton format that Alolan Muck can hit that becomes a problem. New card that was printed, Misfortune Sisters. Genuinely, I think that card is going to be very good in GLC, and it's going to be extremely good against cards that have a very linear game plan. Kyogre wants to set itself up over and over again, and you've got a very limited amount of tech cards that you play to deal with that. Misfortune Sisters is going to be, it could be extremely devastating. Like, if you hit Versus Seeker Field Blower, like, holy shit, all right, what are you going to do? Like, that's really bad for Kyogre. If you follow that up with, like, I don't know, man, what? Like, you lose Versus Seeker, that's real bad, and then Field Blower, all right, cool, I'm going to start putting Fighting Fury Belt on Guzzlord. Now it's got 80 HP, something like that, 190. You're not two-shotting me, so that's really tough. Lots of different options there. I think any disruption cards are going to be very big, and people just don't tend to play them. With Control being nerfed, I have been leaning towards playing a lot more disruption-based decks. I have a Grass Control deck that doesn't seek to lock the game out, but rather you just sort of slow the game down long enough to build up a Torterra that's just going to remove every threat they have and just take 6 prizes in one go. I have a Fighting Mill deck that's designed to remove resources from your opponent, but has enough attackers to pivot to actually winning the game if you need to. You can win on prizes. And just using Mill as a way to get there is pretty significant. Fire Mill is honestly pretty scary for Kyogre. If that Charizard plus Centiskorch hits, like, what? Like, you Welder... Even just Weldering attaching to Centiskorch mills you... Is it he mills 1 per card? I actually don't remember that.
Good question.
Centiskorch, TCG...
It's 1 per energy you have attached.
1 per energy. Okay, so you welder to it and have Charizard in play, and you mill, say you just mill 6 cards. That's still really, really disruptive. Like any 6 cards that you're hitting off of a Kyogre is a big deal. Or even like, so it's kind of tough. I think if people start leaning more into disruption based decks, there's gonna be a lot of answers to Kyogre that people weren't really considering running before. But those disruption based decks have gone largely unexplored. I know AAB in the Discord, in the Tricky Gym Discord made, I think like he got 5th place at one of the first full grip 1Ks with a disruption based dark list. Decks like that are getting more tools to use, with cards like Misfortune Sisters being printed, Delinquent just being a card that people aren't playing. Red card even. Like, unironically, you just red card Kyogre turn 1, and now its 7-card hand is 4 cards. It's a combo that requires a lot of pieces, so just setting Kyogre back on cards at any point in time is pretty devastating. It can make it a lot harder to get that combo, and it can make it a lot harder to get that combo in a stable manner. Like, if Kyogre gets an attack off, but has to do so by playing only Feebas down, and then Kyogre's like, it's just Kyogre and maybe a Remoraid or something and an Octillery, and you knock out Kyogre in return, there's not much coming back from that. Like, it's really hard to do. So limiting resources in any way is going to be a very big deal. Psychic Spread, just to real quick touch on it, Psychic Spread is a deck that I haven't really seen too much of. I think on paper it's probably okay. You can kind of just move, like if you get Dusknoir up fast enough, you can kind of move your damage counters around to clear any of Kyogre's threats, but it is a little slow, and it plays a lot of basics that don't live to Kyogre attacks. So that's something you have to be very careful about. Feebas, I think, in particular, is a liability in that matchup. Unbroken Bonds Mew, just sniping it for 3 damage, ignoring the Submerge ability, very, very strong. That's the kind of effects that you want to be looking for in a deck that's trying to find answers to Kyogre. That Mew is very good, very, very good. So, and then just like regular psychic.
Mostly everything.
Yeah, the only thing is the regular psychic attacking. It's the same deal as the Dragonite in Dragon. They're playing that Gallade now. They're playing the Gardevoir. If the Stage 2 Draw Engines get online, then you're going to be in trouble. But Kyogre's kind of designed to not let that happen as consistently. So for the most part, it's probably something I wouldn't be super worried about. You will probably get Revenge KO'd, but as long as you get your Kyogre set up quick enough and have enough of a board set up in return, you're probably going to be winning that matchup too. So Psychic is really just a question of like whether or not people are going to start playing the disruption cards. Garbodor was like the flavor of the week deck like a month ago, where Mahone played one on stream, made a video about it, and it got pretty popular for like a week, and then people stopped playing it. But with Kyogre becoming a much bigger deal, Garbodor being a really good answer to it probably means that it might not. It probably shouldn't be a flavor of the week deck.
With it.
Yeah, people need to experiment with it more. Try it out and see what happens. That probably wraps it up. We're getting close to 2 hours here. What are we? Do you have any other questions? Anything that I didn't address?
I don't. I think you might have a little over-explained, but you know, for people that are willing to sit through it and learn about all this stuff, it's definitely going to be worth it to them.
Yeah, that's what I tend to do. I talk a lot.
Like, you know, I think the deck is super strong. The deck is definitely a top 3 deck between the other water and grass decks.
Yeah,
But the deck isn't unbeatable. I think as this matchup chart was sort of explained, there's a lot of things that people can be doing to improve their matchups.
Oh my god!
Whether it's a general thing or like a deck specific thing, like sort of like what you're talking about, like fire with toy catchers or recording, just stuff along the lines of that. And psychic as well, just like.
I haven't taken the time. I haven't taken the time to do it because I'm not trying to beat Kyogre. I'm playing Kyogre.
Yeah.
But just looking through like PTCGO and just seeing it, like what attackers place damage counters on Pokemon. You know what I mean? Like anything that places any basic that places 3 damage counters
for 1 energy is a card that you should be playing in your deck if you're worried about your Kyogre matchup. That's just a clean answer to Feebas. I don't know if there's any cards that do that other than Mew and Oricorio, but if there are, that's something you probably want to be doing.
With that, thank everyone for watching and sticking through this.
Yeah, thanks a bunch. Appreciate it.
I hope this is a great resource for people in the GLC format.
Yeah, that's the hope. Hopefully, this is something that people can look to be like, all right, how does this deck work? What can we, how can I play this deck? And also, what can I do to improve my matchup against it even? Or, you know, what play pattern should I be looking out for as a Kyogre looking to figure out what I'm doing? Like there's some nuance about like what do you go, do you go first or second against stuff? Like for the most part, like in any safe matchup, you're gonna go second just because it's you have so many good attackers, but there are plenty of things that you just kind of want to go first, right? And I think the big takeaway is that Kyogre is moving to it's gonna move in one of 2 directions, I think. With big beefy dudes getting in the mix like Wailord from the new set, Kyogre, as it stands, Kyogre is never taking a knockout on that Wailord. That thing is never gonna go down as long as it's attacking. That's it. You do not have a chance as Kyogre decks are currently built against that thing. So Kyogre decks either need to lean more into this turbo attacking deck list that I've thrown together, or B, start branching out and trying to do things that aren't just Kyogre. For example, including that Wailord in your Kyogre deck as the answer to Wailord is something that I'm trying to work out. I think that's going to be a good way to move forward. Again, that's something I'm working on. I think that's going to take it in a different direction. This is what is this? This is Grant Manley's deck here. This is, I think, like, this deck, it's gas. Don't get me wrong. And he has put up tons of great results with it. So clearly, he's doing something right. My deck is built with the idea in mind of sitting behind an Articuno and building up your Kyogre slowly and attacking on turn 3 is going to be too slow once people start catching on and playing stuff like Toy Catcher that can still gust Feebas around Articuno, and spacing out their attackers so that one Kyogre attack isn't just going to wipe your bench. And just having, like, if you give him enough time to get Torterra in play, if you give him enough time to get Wailord in play, you're kind of just out of the game. So I think the decks are going to start to move towards being a lot faster. I mean, perhaps people just aren't going to account for Kyogre, and the meta is still going to be something that this Kyogre build can feast on.
People will just bitch about it.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, hard to say. But I think the natural course of things is going to make the landscape a lot more hostile for Kyogre to exist in. So with that in mind, I think my sort of more aggressive build is going to be the way to go. Or just branching out into something a little bit more varied. Yeah, thanks for taking the time to watch. I think that hopefully this is going to be some kind of a helpful resource for at least a couple people. And yeah, I got nothing else to add. I mean, I do, but not here. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me in the Tricky Gym Discord.
The YouTube comments below for YouTube interaction to push up us off the algorithm.
No way! I couldn't care less about that. This is gonna get like 20 views, and it's all gonna be in like the first 30 seconds, except for like 1 or 2 troopers who stuck it out or fast forwarded right to the tier list. One of the two. Whatever it ends up looking like. Yeah, if you feel free to reach out if you got any questions. I'm always happy to talk about the deck. But yeah, I got nothing else. Take care. Have a good one. See ya. Thanks for hanging out. Goodbye.